Cape's 9th ANC Provincial Conference remain at loggerheads over the issue, which has extended the conclusion of the three-day meeting.
A conference is a festival of ideas because ideas generated and to be expressed at conference do not only come about on the eve of conference sitting. I mean, we have already developed policy discussion documents. We've had the NEC reflecting on that. Provinces have played a role in inputting on that process of policy documents. Now, this conference, the bigger part of a conference like this is the elective part. So that's why we call them elective conferences. Now, the people who must participate in that election in a conference should be duly verified delegates who will have emerged from branch general meetings or BBGM, biannual general meetings, which would have been given this specific mandate to produce delegates to conference. But in those meetings, some discussions are also held on policy documents. Because a three-day conference, while it's a festival of ideas, it's not gonna really start discussing policy matters endlessly.
Well, let's tease out the various issues relating to that conference currently underway. And we are joined by political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa. Lukhanyo, good evening to you. Thanks again for being my partner in looking at developments down in the Eastern Cape as you were yesterday. So about an hour and a half ago, we saw, an attempt at disruption, which was very quickly reined in. Of course, the media is not allowed in the session as we speak now, so it's very hard to say what the mood inside is. But what's your assessment of that sort of, early rumble at this critical juncture in the conference of the credentials process?
Good evening, Iman. Look, things are tense at the conference, and from reports that we've received from some of your reporters on the ground, we can see that the credentials has become a very sticky issue, as it always is with many other conferences. But now, especially on this one, where credentials have been debated since last night, and we can see that they started debating them again at 10 a.m. this morning. And, by 4 o'clock, they still were not anywhere near concluding with the debate on credentials. And we can see what the sticky points are. The MADIKIZELA faction is now trying to litigate some of the merits of the case that they presented before court last night. They're trying to litigate that now on the conference floor to see if they can be able to, find a better result on the conference floor. But unfortunately, it seems like as it was last night, even today, they'll still be out of luck because the numbers don't seem to be on their side. And again, those issues that they're raising will be dismissed even by the conference. And if credentials go ahead, it doesn't look like they have the numbers to be able to carry this conference.
Yeah, and you did so quite eloquently yesterday. Explain why this issue around numbers and who's allowed to vote and not is so critical in an election where every vote counts. Now, Dr. Breakfast earlier was saying the race might not be as neck and neck as we had previously envisaged, given that, again, as you pointed out, within the conference itself, the issue of those contested regions participating and voting has again been thwarted by those who are in favor of the other contender, BABABLO, MADIKIZELA. But just I want to sort of turn away from this cul-de-sac a little bit. We've discussed the key themes around the horse trading. We've discussed, the battle for who gets to vote and who doesn't. We've seen, as with other ANC elective conferences, the issue of credentials, all of these administrative issues kind of, threaten the successful outcome of a conference. And ultimately, some conferences have gone ahead and some conferences have been mired in legal action. What different perspective, what different truth or insight are you seeing based on the last 2 days and the fact that it's now been extended into tomorrow, emerging from this conference?
Iman, I've always maintained that in any conference, the incumbent is always likely to win because they have the ability to manipulate party processes and make decisions that best benefit their faction. And we've seen that happen with this particular conference. The PTT has been able to bulldoze and ensure that some of their the branches that will vote for them are able to get voting delegate status on this particular conference. And that's one of the insights that we must be able to have, is that he who controls party levers of power always has the ability to control the party processes in order to be able to benefit from that. It takes an extraordinary amount of effort for a challenger that comes in from the outside to depose an incumbent, because they don't have access to the same levers of power that we can see here. So fortune favors the incumbent, and that's what we see here with Oscar MABUYANE. He's able to cull the numbers from the other faction, ensure that some of their branches are unable to even make it as voting delegates. So once you see though your numbers getting culled, before you even get to the battlefield through disqualification, you get disheartened and your members get discouraged as well. And that's when your faction resorts to probably violence in an effort to be able to save face.
Let's go to, what I talked about in the setup for our conversation around the view being taken of Oscar MABUYANE's, reference to influence and interference, essentially, by members of the national ANC at a provincial level. The ANC National, as we heard from Pule Mabe a little bit earlier in that news conference, would say, well, this is our responsibility to make sure that when there are matters that are threatening an outcome or the smooth running of a conference, it is our duty and responsibility to step in. What do you make of that?
Well, this is true politics, Iman. This is what representative democracy is about, in that it creates levers, and linkages of power between national, provincial, and even at local level. So people in this value chain of politics then support each other, and via osmosis, they're able to ensure their own continuity. So national leaders have an interest in what happens at provincial level, because in order to be, nominated to stand for any position at ANC's national conference that's coming up in December, you need to have a province that is going to nominate you. So you need to be able to get to a province that you can be able to manipulate, that you can be able to bargain with, that you can be able to trade with, in an effort to make sure that your name is able to make it onto the ballot paper come December. So this is the natural progression of representative democracy. And in terms of hegemony, we've seen how many writers and scholars have given us this perspective, that there's always that symbiotic relationship that exists between leaders at the top and the brass membership, and that value chain that goes all the way to the top.
Which is why then I suppose, one can't be faulted for having a healthy sense of cynicism when, Pule Mabe almost sought to dispel the very argument that you're raising right now about that connectivity. But before I let you go, and perhaps a brief answer on this one, the issue that surrounds the hosting of these conferences truly lay bare the underlying power struggles and factions, and that is without doubt, that's what we've been talking about at every ANC provincial conference. But how does the party, which is essentially the sum total of its parts, begin to take this in hand, control it, or do you think that it serves the national executive to allow things to develop in turbulence?
The ANC is truly a factional organization, Iman. It cannot exist without factions. So for as long as that is the case, that will what we see now will continue to happen. What we need to see in this renewal and revival of the ANC that they have is a closer attention being placed on the policy positions of the organization, rather than the people and personalities that seem to take center stage each time there's a conference in the ANC. So until they come back and resolve on policy positions and policy issues, then the ANC will continue to be fragmented and be a factionalized organization as we currently see now.
Well, the next couple of hours, as we said last night, are certainly going to be very interesting. Thank you very much, Lukhanyo, for your analysis. Really do appreciate it. Political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa.